Thank you, Dr. Magos, for a very nice introduction. Good day to everyone. I am Bobby Lopez, and I'm here to present with you my paper entitled Indigenous or Local Knowledge, Anitism, and Sustainable Development, Challenges and Interventions in Preservations of Indigenous Rights and Knowledge Systems and Practices. For the objectives of my study, at the end of the presentation, the participants are expected to identify the contributions of indigenous or local knowledge, which are anchored in Anitism in the attainment of sustainable development, and enumerate the challenges faced and interventions made in the Philippines regarding the preservation of SPS. In 1979, for the first time, the scientists of the world discussed among themselves issues relating to climate change in an international conference spearheaded by the World Meteorological Organization. At around the year 1990, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change confirmed in a report that the threat of climate change is real, as indicated by rising sea level, rapid melting of glaciers in the Arctic Sea, ocean acidification, stronger typhoon signal and hurricane category, increasing global average temperature, and extreme drought, to mention a few. In the latter part of the 1980s, the concept of sustainable development was introduced. It is a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And this was introduced at the time the world was battling the threats introduced by the climate change. As such, indigenous or local knowledge anchored on Anitism is so indispensable to its promotion because its practices already reflect the core value or the very soul of its aspiration. As defined by Brookhack, indigenous knowledge refers to the network of knowledges, beliefs, and traditions that guide relations among human, non-human, and other than human beings in specific ecosystems over time. On the other hand, Anitism refers to the system of belief of the early Filipinos, which was derived from the root word anito, meaning spirits of the deceased ancestors or spirits inhabiting the nature. This study was undertaken for there are limited studies with a similar focus. Most later studies were confined only to indigenous knowledge and practices for sustainability in the forest, communities along Cordillera, mountain range, and coastal communities. There were few to none studies that mentioned it in the plain region or any attempt to compare those knowledge and practices in various regions of the country. For the research methodology, the study used a descriptive research design. The literature review was utilized in gathering the data of the Foundation for Philippine Environment, who is an expert in the field of anthropology and environmental education. Now, for the results and discussion of the study, indigenous belief system was found to play a crucial role in management and preservation of the natural environment and its natural resources. In fact, authors in Grimm's book highlight that indigenous religions may lead to more ecologically sound behavior, just like what has been observed in practices of indigenous peoples in some parts of India, Kota Beludsa, the belief in ancestral and nature spirits. This is locally known as Anitism, which spreads out in the entire archipelago and is still being upheld today by some groups through oral tradition and socialization. The sustainable practices that I am going to share with you today is largely based on local or indigenous knowledge that has been influenced by Anitism. To begin with, on animals, indigenous people from northwestern Cagayan are still using traditional fishing or hunting techniques. They even apply selective hunting or fishing, which means they avoid pregnant or female animals. This is to give way to these animals to grow and reproduce continuously. The local beliefs in Malolos, Bulacan, like kasumpaan, in which an animal like fish or a bird is given utmost respect and veneration by a particular family from several generations, believing that it saves the life of their ancestors from a tragic event. Another is the belief among Tagalogs that there were animals that could bring misfortunes to the lives of their owners like turtle and owl. Some people from San Miguel, Bulacan even believed that there were animals being taken care of by enchanted beings that must not be disturbed. These beliefs and practices are indeed in line with the conservation efforts of various groups and organizations here in the country. Tagalogs in lowland areas further believe that spirits can transform into an insect or animal. The best example would be butterfly, which is sometimes considered a visiting spirit of a deceased loved ones. Aswang, an evil shape-shifting creature according to Philippine folklore that shares the grotesque characteristics of werewolves, vampires, and ghoul, can mimic the form and shape of a black for those chopped down, and avoidance of cutting down young trees and some species of trees like balete and fiscus in Ifugao, were both reflective of sustainable practice. Perhaps this can be associated with our belief that trees are serving as abode or dwelling place of some nature's spirit. Now, on managing land fertility and pest control, some indigenous groups like those in northwestern Cagayan and Eba-Aita of Orion, Bataan use organic fertilizers from decaying fruits, rice and corn stalks, and animal manure. Another is the performance of holok among Ipugaos to control the pests. In this ritual, grasses and plants collected by farmers were sown in the rice field after being grinded well. Their use is indeed more environmentally friendly when to be compared to their commercial counterparts. Now, on sacred places and time, Filipinos in general believe that there are sacred spaces occupied by unseen powerful beings. Thus, for the longest time, they remain pristine and untouched. Thus, biodiversity flourishes and abounds within the perimeters of those places. This belief can be rooted in their view that some nature spirits inhabit the riverine areas, mountains, fields, etc. This is not to mention that different indigenous groups from Luzon to Mindanao believe in passages going to the afterlife like caves, seas, and holes in the underworld. In other places like Bataan and northwestern Cagayan, where hunting and fishing are allowed, rituals are still being performed before its conduct to secure permission from the nature spirit. There were even seasons when hunting and fishing are being prohibited, like in the case of Senora River in Lasi, Siquijor. This is to make sure that fish will have ample time to multiply or reproduce their kind. It has also been observed that places in Cordillera, where slash and burn agriculture is being practiced, land were given some time to rest after its full utilization to regain its fertility and to allow regeneration of plants and tree in the area. A very good example for that is the case of Uma in the Kalinga, Apayao. The Muyong of the Ifugao, the Lacon of Bontoc Mountain Province, and Imong of Kalinga, Apayao are traditional forest management systems that are found to be effective. The areas they covered are believed to be sacred spaces, so the people within those places are giving high respect and protecting at the same time the places being covered by the said forest. Now, on utilization of natural resources, indigenous peoples of Batanes like Ibatan, Lumad, and Jamamapun of Mindanao are all considering the sea as a collective property. Thereby, when they get something from it, they make sure that they get only what is enough to meet the needs of their family. Greediness has no place in their heart. The same pattern of thinking and behavior has been noted among people from places that are rich in gold deposits like Masbate, Bohol, Surigao, and Butuan. What they get is just enough to produce jewelry as part of their family heirlooms that they can pass on to the succeeding generations as part of their tradition. Indeed, this practice can help a lot in the effort to conserve natural resources. A closer examination of the details presented will show that indigenous people's sustainable practices come from their understanding of their coexistence with ancestral or nature spirits within their physical environment. Undeniably, there is balance and harmony in their relationship that secures sustainable development. This can be attributed to the fact that each of them is composed, based on their belief, of a common core that characterizes their being, the spirit, which according to some indigenous groups from the southern part of the Philippines, is being possessed not just by living organisms but even by inanimate matter. Furthermore, this spirit is believed to be responsible in giving life, mobility, consciousness, good health, logical and ethical reasoning, kindness, and a lot more to those who possess it. Perhaps it will explain why there is balance or harmony of relationship between a human, Anito or spirit, and the nature. The mobility and interaction of beings in the different layers of the world, as depicted earlier in the idea of tripartite cosmos, basically through the help of local legends and narratives, further strengthens the idea about the intimacy and harmony of relationship that exists between and among human, nature, and Anito. So this is something that perhaps will explain why we have this belief that the physical world here to continue on my discussion. And the problem now here is that the balance in the relationship was put into challenge in the advent of colonization, capitalism, and globalization. This is brought about by the introduction of a philosophy which was known as the anthropocentrism, a belief in the centrality and supremacy of human in the universe. It further leads to the development of object-subject relationship, which replaces the balanced relationship they had before. In this relationship, people become more profit-driven and their hearts become more home of greediness and immense desire for power. Now, at present, there are many challenges and severe threats in the preservation of IKSPs in the Philippines. According to Lavinia and the Global Environment Facility, the following serve as threats and challenges in the preservation of IKSP. Loss of indigenous people's territorial base, introduction of the so-called modern practices of agriculture and medicine, misappropriation of indigenous knowledge by outside researchers, erosion of traditional governance, unsustainable tourism, and poorly planned infrastructure development. Now, to address these issues and challenges, the following interventions or measures were formulated: enactment of laws, creation of the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, creation of Intangible Cultural Heritage Committee by the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, as suggested by the UNESCO, integration of IKSPs to the curriculum, establishment of the School of Living Traditions, utilization of social media to promote IKSPs, and collaborative projects and programs with international agencies and organizations like International Labor Organization, United Nations Development Program, and Global Environment Facility. Now, for its conclusion and recommendation, acknowledging the identity, knowledge, and capability of an indigenous group is an all-important component of inclusive development, a vital feature of sustainable development. It manifests through indigenous knowledge in conservation and management of natural resources must be recognized in its contribution to climate change adaptation and promotion of sustainable development. Finally, it is recommended that future studies emphasize indigenous knowledge for protecting the atmosphere, which was not covered in this study. Data collection on how to foretell and prepare for an impending calamity using indigenous knowledge may also be considered, since climate change nowadays brings more life-threatening disasters. In addition, the academe, the ICCs, and the local government may work together for the protection and promotion of indigenous knowledge through the passing of relevant local ordinances, organizing and promotion of indigenous knowledge through establishment of civic organizations, and inclusion of a separate subject in the basic education curricula that deals with the IKSPs. That's all for today. Thank you and mabuhay.